Proteus includes a sophisticated manual routing system to help you make connections quickly. However, before you start placing tracks, there are a few setup tasks to consider. You should set up your layer stack and drill ranges. Proteus will use this information when you are routing to use the most appropriate via range. You should set up design rules for the board to specify how far apart objects on the PCB need to be from each other. Proteus can use this during routing to ensure valid tracks are placed. The Net Classes tab lets you set track widths and bias styles for signals carrying different amounts of current. Proteus will use this to automatically use the correct track width when you are routing a connection. Finally, the Layer Pairs dialog allows you to set the default destination layers for vias on more complex PCBs with lots of signal layers. Now that setup is complete, you can begin routing. Start by selecting track mode, then the desired layer, and finally click left on one of the pads. If you move the mouse, you can see that the trace follows the path you have taken. You'll also see a shadow track on the nearest destination, and you can press the Enter button on your keyboard at any time to automatically complete the track. If you prefer, you can route manually to the destination, guiding the track placement by moving the mouse. If you need to be more precise, you can left-click during placement to lock in the existing track. A left click on the destination pad will commit the trace. If you need to change the layers while placing a track, you can double-click to drop a via and switch layers and continue routing on the other layer. Alternatively, you can float a via by hitting the spacebar during placement. This will then allow you to move and position the via as close as possible and still obey all the design rules. A left click will drop the floating via and you can continue routing on the associated layer. After placement, you can drag individual segments to make changes to the topology of the track. You can also select and change the width of the track or the layer on which it is routed. The track style will be automatically chosen for you based on your net class listing, and will obey all the specified design rules for the board. In tight areas, or to connect to thin pads, you can hold the Shift key down to force a track into a narrower neck style. Curved routing is fully supported in Proteus. Simply hold the Control key down while routing to switch into curved track mode. These circular arcs are all design rule aware as well. However, if you need elliptical curves, you need to toggle off Follow Me routing mode, then place the track with the Control key down. And finally toggle Follow Me routing back on. If you need to match the lengths of signals, configuration of length matching takes place on the Technology menu. Then select your tracks by holding the Control key down and left-clicking consecutively on each track. Next, right-click on one of the tracks and either match the routes to a specific length or match them to each other. Match tracks can be viewed in connectivity mode and a report produced from the board information dialog form. teardrops can be configured from the technology menu and will then apply to the entire board. Once set up, teardrop connections will be added both on route completion or route edit. Proteus will allow you to miter the tracks on the board either on a per-track basis by right-clicking on the track, or as a global command on all tracks on the board via the Edit menu. This is typically its most useful as a post-routing step to minimize track length or to avoid solder traps.